Hey guys, today I'm gonna show you a pure class stamina warden build for solo play in update 50. Update 50 is still 3 weeks away, but there will be no more changes on the public test server, so the current state is final. I have tested this build by solving Veteran Dread Cellar dungeon, and that was in the second week of PTS, so the build is even stronger now, because back then, Nature's Gift passive was bugged, and wasn't restoring any resources on overheals. You can find both recording and a log of this run in the description and on the website guide. Speaking of which, this build is also on my website, so if you prefer written guides over YouTube videos, you can read it there instead. The link will be in the description. And one more thing, in this guide I'll be using simulated parses to give you a better idea of how much damage you're losing from choosing suboptimal things. Like for example, you'll be able to see this table of races, showing you exactly how much damage you'd be losing from choosing a different race. Or this table of weapons, showing you exactly how much damage you'd be losing by switching away from daggers. I don't want to make this intro too long, so if you're more curious about how it works, I added more info about it to the website guide. Starting off with the new class Masteries, which is a new system where you can choose 2 out of 5 class Masteries, if you don't subclass any skill line. In this build, we're going to use Wild Adaptation and Glacial Obstinance. Wild Adaptation grants us 333 weapon and spell damage for each stats effect on the enemy, up to 1665 at 5 stats effects. Glacial Obstinance upgrades Bond with Nature passive to also activate when casting Winter's Embrace abilities, and to grant 15% weapon and spell damage for 10 seconds, if you are at full health after the heal. In more difficult fights, you can also replace Glacial Obstinance with Greenkeeper's Hide, which reduces our damage taken by 3% for each stats effect on the attacker, up to a maximum of 15% damage reduction at 5 stats effects. Moving on to skills. This is the base setup that will work for most situations, and which should be your starting point when making situational setups. First we have Wield Soul, with the Bleed, Druid's Resurgence, and Resolve combination on it. A spammable which will restore 600 stamina and magicka with each cast, which is crucial for sustaining with a Warden. It's also our source of major resolve, which increases armor by 5948. Next we have Deep Fissure, an ability which deals a lot of damage per cast and applies crucial major and minor breach debuffs. Next, Bull Netch provides a lot of stamina and sustain, a 5% damage boost, constantly purges debuffs, and it's our source of major brutality and sorcery. Arctic Blast is a 20-second dot around you, which will deal a lot of damage by proccing the chilled stats effect. It can also be used as a self-heal, if there are no enemies around you. Soul Burst, with the Bleed, Lingering Torment, and Resolve combination, is an AoE dot that grants you minor resolve, increasing your armor by 2974. It's also your AoE spammable. Wild Guardian is front part for the 5% critical damage from Advanced Species passive. Don't summon it, and don't spend any ultimate on it. Lotus Blossom provides major savagery and prophecy, plus some passive healing whenever you light or heavy attack. This healing will trigger the Nature's Gift passive. Winter's Revenge is a ground dot that deals massive damage when you count in the chilled procs, triggered thanks to the skill's increased innate chance to proc stats effects. Elemental Susceptibility is an extremely strong ability that does a multitude of things. It's completely free to cast, so it will help you sustain. It applies Major Breach, which reduces enemies' armor by 5948, which actually isn't important in this specific build, because we already have Deep Fissure. But it also applies Burning, Chilled, and Concussed stats effects at the beginning, and then every 7.5 seconds. All of these stats effects deal decent damage, but Concussed will also apply minor vulnerability for 4 seconds, increasing enemies' damage taken by 5%, and Chilled will also apply minor maim for 4 seconds, reducing enemies' damage done by 5%. Elemental Blockade is a 15-second ground dot, which will constantly proc your weapon damage enchantment. Ulf's Contingency, with the Frost, Lingering Torment, and Force combination on it, deals damage on AoE, applies a 22-second dot, and grants you minor force, increasing your critical damage by 10%. It's delayed until the next ability, with a cost. Northern Storm is a powerful ultimate that deals damage on an AoE, increases your damage done, and grants you major protection, reducing your damage taken by 10%. Now moving on to situational skills. Winter's Revenge and Arctic Blast are the first skills that have to go, if you need to slot something situational. In that order. Unless the situational skill specifically says that it's replacing something else. First we have Resolving Vigor. Use it for fights where there's a lot of damage happening in a short burst. The heal over time from Resolving Vigor is short but very strong, so casting it at the right time can help you survive such mechanics. It replaces Soul Burst, since both apply minor resolve. Living Trellis is a healing ability you can spam under big pressure. It's also good for fights where you're getting hit very frequently. Shimmering Shield is a massive damage shield that works only against projectiles. It's extremely strong, but also very situational. Silver Leash is a chain ability that you can slot in trash packs to stack enemies and get through them faster. Ulf's Contingency with the Frost, Gladiator's Tenacity, and Force combination on it is a different script combination which trades the Dot from Lingering Torment for the mitigation from Gladiator's Tenacity. Use it in fights where you need more damage mitigation. Next we have Revealing Flare. Use it for more difficult fights where you need more damage mitigation. It's a skill that passively grants major protection, reducing your damage taken by 10%. It will also trigger the Magicka 8 passive, which increases your Magicka recovery by 10%. Next we have Precognition, an ultimate that breaks you out of some otherwise unavoidable stuns. You'll need it to get around some mechanics which are otherwise impossible or very difficult to solo, like for example Infernus Hold in Zan the Scalecaller fight. Now let me show you a few final setups you could end up with. This is a setup for trash packs. The only change, compared to the base setup, is that Silver Leash replaces Elemental Susceptibility. And this is a tanky setup, which trades damage for more survivability. Use it against harder boss fights, or if you simply want a tankier build, and don't mind fights taking longer. Revealing Flare replaces Arctic Blast on front bar, Arctic Blast moves to back bar, replacing Winter's Revenge, and Ulf's Contingency swaps the Lingering Torment script to Gladiator's Tenacity. Now as for rotation, I'm gonna show you two rotations. A priority list and a static rotation. The static rotation is roughly 7% weaker. A priority list means you simply recast abilities when they run out, and follow this list of priorities when there are multiple things to refresh. And personally, I find it straight up easier than the static rotation, because you simply press things when the number on top of them turns to 0. Static rotation is weaker, but might be easier for some players, and people have been asking me for it a lot. I decided to keep Lotus Blossom outside of the static rotation, because otherwise I would have to create like 60 steps. And this way we only have 22 steps in the static rotation. You just have to remember to refresh Lotus Blossom whenever it runs out, and cast Northern Storm whenever it's available. In both of these rotations, you should remember that you can pre-buff Lotus Blossom, Bullnetch, Arctic Blast, Soul Burst, Deep Fissure, and Ulf's Contingency before entering combat. I am now very quickly going through all of the passives you should get on the screen. You can either pause the video or look up this list on the website guide. Some trees are only needed when using situational skills. For example, Fighter's Guild provides nothing but Silver Leash. Moving on to gear. This is the base setup for Overland content. So Ares Cry, Sul'Zan's Torment, Ring of the Pelorder Mythic, One Piece Slamcrow, and Crushing Wall. They can obviously be replaced by other, easier to obtain sets. Here's how a fully crafted setup would look like. It would use 5 pieces of Order's Wrath and Tideborn Wildstalker, and 2 pieces of Highland Sentinel for the 2-piece crit chance bonus. Highland Sentinel is on the ring and head slot, so that it's easy to later replace it with Slamcrow and Ring of the Pelorder. For this build, the instanced gear setup is barely different than the Overland one. You simply change 2 medium armor pieces to light, so that you end up with 4 medium, 3 light weight composition. Fallback gear for instance content is very similar, except I added Whirl to body, because with 3 light armor pieces you can actually fit Whirl there. And I removed Aegis Collar, because in instance content, where enemies have more armor, Tideborn actually pulls ahead of Aegis Collar, so there's no reason to list a set that is weaker and harder to obtain. Daggers are the default weapon. Inferno and Lightning Staff are the best ranged weapons, when mechanics make melee annoying. The comparison table also shows other options, if you want to use a different weapon type for roleplay. If you want more damage, you can use Shatter Path Signet instead of Ring of the Pelorder, and never spend your ultimate. In fights with no adds, Whirl is straight up better than Sul'Zan, and if you don't have it, you should use Tideborn instead. You can change some or all stamina enchants to health ones for extremely difficult fights. You can use more medium armor in instance content when you need more mitigation or want to dodge roll more. This deals less damage and requires switching your Mundus to the lover. Go from 4 medium to 6 medium and then swap Force of Nature back to Wrathful Strikes, since the extra penetration now comes from the lover. Moving on to champion points. In the blue tree, you're going to use Master at Arms, Deadly the Aim, Fighting Finesse, and Wrathful Strikes. Replace Wrathful Strikes with Force of Nature in any instanced content. If you need more mitigation, you can replace Wrathful Strikes and Fighting Finesse with 2 of the 4 mitigation CPs, depending on the type of damage the boss deals to you. And Riving Blows is a decent option if you need more HPS. In the red tree, we're going to use Boundless Vitality, Bloody Renewal, Rejuvenation, and Fortified. You can use Bracing Anchor in fights where you block a lot and don't have to move much. You can use Celerity in fights where you do need to move a lot. And if you need more Magicka sustain in fights of VATS, you can use Siphoning spells along Bloody Renewal. And as for the green tree, the only important one is Steed's Blessing, which increases your movement speed out of combat. Moving on to race. For solo, you need both damage and survivability, so every race brings something to the table. I use Nord because in difficult solo content, the armor ratio is worth the DPS trade-off. If you want to use a different race, the table shows comparison between their DPS. Moving on to Mundus. Most of the time, you should use the Thief, which increases your critical damage. If you want to use 6 medium armor pieces in instance content, which is an option I mentioned in the gear section, you will have to switch to Lover instead, which provides penetration. For extremely difficult content, you can also consider switching to the Lady, which grants armor. Moving on to attributes. For most content, you should put all 64 points into stamina. For difficult content, you should devote as many attribute points as necessary to health. For some content you'll be able to get away with 32 health, 32 stamina, and for the extremely difficult stuff, you will need 64 health. As you can see from the table, the damage loss from changing attributes is minimal, and you can gain up to 7,808 health, so don't be afraid to change your attributes. Moving on to food. Orzorga's Smoked Bear Haunch is the default food. Our armor potions don't restore resources, so the food has to cover stamina and magic recovery. Jewels of Misrule is a cheaper alternative. Braised Rabbit with Spring Vegetables is a full damage option. It trades the recoveries for max stamina and more max health. But you'll need Tristat or Heroism potions in order to sustain it. It's roughly a 3.5% damage increase. Moving on to potions. Armor Potion is the default option. It gives you 5,280 armor, which is a lot of damage mitigation. Tristat Potion is something you should be running when using the Braised Rabbit with Spring Vegetables food. It has no recoveries, so the potion has to take care of sustain. Heroism Potion is basically Tristat Potion, but with the useless Restore Health changed to Minor Heroism. It's straight up an upgrade over a Tristat Potion, but it's expensive to craft. Moving on to Parse. This is a 72.8k Parse on the 6mm skeleton dummy, using base skill setup, instanced gear without Sul'Zan, armor potions, Orzorga's Smoked Bear Haunch food, Thief Mundus, and on a Nord. You can find a recording of it on the website guide. And that's it for this video. If you have any more questions, you can comment down below or join our Discord server Wildheart. As always, feedback will be appreciated. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to subscribe to my channel and check out my Twitch. Thanks for watching and see you next time.